automobile industry has now arrived when we talk about the change. From horsepower, now we are talking about probably the digital power, which is measured in gigawatts. If you talk about an average car which has millions of lines written in it as their algorithm, or you call it software, uh, 40 to 100 ECUs are powering these cars nowadays. Though the number of ECUs are now reducing, but there is a super ECUs or centralized ECUs that is taking over, but that is increasing the complexity in the car further. And this all digitalization or the use of software and technology is bringing out change from the product development to the product and finally the service and the customer engagement process. So the entire ecosystem is now heavily impacted by connected and digital. So that's the key topic that we are going to talk about, and we have eminent panel today representing very well Mr. Balbir Singh. He is representing luxury car manufacturer Audi India. We have Mr. Amit Jain, who is representing the supply chain, means the component supplier Uno Minda Group. We are also joined by Mr. Hardeep Singh Brar. He is representing India's youngest but the fastest growing passenger vehicle company. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us today to discuss this pertinent subject. Before we start the conversation, let me understand from all of you, what is the current level of connectivity that we see in automobiles or the vehicles, and what is the next level of connectivity that we can talk about, starting with you, Balbir, and then everybody can join in.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for having me on the show. I think this is a moving question that connectivity is changing every day. And what we see today is there are three levels of connectivities. One is connectivities when you get inside your car. How are you connected to your car, your music system, your Wi-Fi, and when you go close to the car opens by itself, so all those kind of connectivity. So this is one level of connectivity. The second level of connectivity is you're connected through cloud. Your car is connected to your cloud and it's connected to your mobile, and you're able to see all the data of the movement of car, where it is, what mileage, all those data that you're able to connect. And the third level of connectivity is basically car to person, car to car, car to any other system which is outside the car. Now, the first level of connectivity is already very prominent, and the second level of connectivity is also doing very well. It's the third level of connectivity, which is connected cars, car-to-car communication, which is developing on a daily basis. I think autonomous driving, which is going to come in the next couple of years, is going to define to a large extent how the development in this arena will take place. And this is something which is a question of discussion today, and to what extent each country can go in this topic, and this is what we are evaluating all the brands right now. So I think there are multiple layers on connectivity, and the two level of connectivity has already happened. Third level is what is moving fast today and probably will continue to increase in the coming years.
Thank you, Balbir. All this magic being created with the connectivity and software, at the back of it is a component manufacturer or a supplier. Amit, you as a CTO, how hard it is for you to deliver all this, and what's happening at the back end?
So I think what we see obviously in the automotive area is these macro trends around connected, shared, electrified, and also autonomous. And I think the backbone of all this, we do see the common thread of connectivity across. And we also see a very changing landscape in how the vehicles are being built today. What kind, I mean, in the past there was a more distributed architecture, more discrete, where there are multiple ECUs. We see that converging into central domain controllers. In the future, more central vehicle computes with zonal controllers, and more about central compute and sensor fusion in the future. So we, I think, are responsible for a lot of these components and building these competencies where software is the key, because software drives all this at the end of the day. And how do we build reusable blocks, software-defined architectures, over-the-air connectivity, more about cybersecurity and functional safety. These are all very important aspects of what we are trying to do as far as standardized, reusable, updatable software blocks to actually deliver all these macrotrends.
Thank you, Amit. From millions of lines of codes, we are going to achieve at least a billion lines of code with the autonomy. And we see the way, ADAS is catching up again, the software influence will increase. If you talk about electronics in the car, which currently is about 15% of the total cost of a car, which will go up to 50% by the end of this decade. That speaks the dominance this software or the technology is going to play. Coming to the front end of the mobility industry, the dealer or retailing industry, there we have been talking a lot about the high cost of real estate, high cost of running those dealership setup or retailing setup. How do you think that this connectivity and the digital technology or the software is going to change the landscape? How is it going to go beyond AR, VR that we are talking about right now, but that's still not picked up quite well in India? How do you see the next level of transformation happening at that side of the business?
Thank you, Nabeel, for this question, and good afternoon, everyone. So when we look at the connectivity, we divide them into three parts. The first one is infotainment, right, which is about heads-up display and your digital displays, etc. The second part is telematics, which is going to play a big role in the overall consumer journey and also from the manufacturer's perspective. And the third one is infrastructure, which Balbir spoke about, how vehicle-to-vehicle interaction happens, vehicle-to-customer, vehicle-to-grid, and so on and so forth. So let me focus more on telematics, which is going to be very integral so far as the entire consumer journey is concerned. Now in telematics, you have all these predictive maintenance features wherein if something is happening to brake pads, if the engine oil is up to the level or the other coolants, etc., they are up to certain level or not. So that will help a dealer and the manufacturers knowing that this particular component is requiring a maintenance, and hence the actions will be far more proactive than probably what it is today, right? So which means the downtime is much lower, and hence this is going to really help overall. The second part is, when we talk about vehicle to infrastructure, the cars would start interacting with the external bodies, all the traffic signs, the lanes, etc. I think that will make a consumer far more, the number of accidents that we see in India. I think there's a lot of scope when vehicles start interacting with the infrastructure, and hence the overall accidents would go down. Yes, that does mean that the number of accidental cars which are coming to the dealer's workshop will reduce, but then there are other scopes which will which will further add to the dealer revenue as well.
Thank you, Hardeep. Balbir, I just want to understand from you, Mr. Brar mentioned about predictive maintenance. When we talk about connectivity, a lot of concern over data is also coming up. How do you see this, puzzle being solved? Because people say that who owns the data? And that data is going to be the main driver when we talk about the allied business, be it insurance, be it the service provider. How do you see that, coming out? We do not have policy in India right now. How do you see this will be resolved? Do you think it will remain as it is, or there is a solution going to come?
So the simple answer is customer owns the data of that individual customer. So whatever connectivity that we have today through telematics, the ownership of the data is with the customer. So the customer is the only one who can access that data. what we are able to access is part of that data which is not individualistic but as a group of customers. So you can see certain trends coming out of those data. So that is something which we are able to see, but otherwise individual customer data is owned by the customer. Of course, the challenges of security of data is always there. So we have various processes, various, let's say, software through which we build those walls that the data is not leaked. We try to keep it as protected as possible. The maximum investments goes into this subject when it comes to datamatics or telematics. So I think it is our joint responsibility when we invest in any of the features that we bring in for telematics, that the data is protected for the customers, and this is our daily job when we invest in any project. This is one of the core investment that we do.
Software technology is going to completely change the user experience also in the automobile. We see with shared, one of the mega trends in case scenario is going to emerge back, though it has been going down after COVID, but it is going to go up very soon after things get better or the fear of infection goes away. In such a scenario, how do you think the technology or the software is going to play a role in enhancing the user experience of these shared mobility? Yeah.
So, if you see today, even today, the cars today are, let's say, a moving data subject, and that's how the technology is developing. You're right. I think we were talking a lot of shared mobility in last couple of years, but last 2 years we have not spoken about this subject. But I think if I only talk of India, and I'm not talking global right now, we are still little away from shared mobility. We still want to own our cars. So I believe if you just compare ourselves to Western world, most of the cars are leased there, but we own the cars. The leasing model is not that successful in India because it's our nature that we want to own the assets. So I think still car ownership is very, very less in India. Per 1,000 people, there are just less than 30 cars. So I believe for next many years, we will still have individual mobilities. Of course, there'll be time on the shared mobility. I think shared mobility probably will come with more autonomous cars. The more autonomous cars or buses, for an example, if we are looking at concepts of smart cities where the cars could, let's say, park by themselves at some point in time. So I think this concept is being developed right now, but mostly in the very developed market. By the time it comes to India, I think there is still time.
Thank you. Mr. Badar, I just want to ask your opinion on shared mobility. How do you see that? Mr. Badar says that it's a long way before we adopt to that in terms of majority share in the mobility space. Second part, what's your thought on the subscription model? We did a study at ETAuto. We found out that the consumer felt the feedback that the OEMs that rolled out subscription model, they said that the cost was very high. People are asking for anything between 20 to 30,000 a month for a vehicle. So do you think that cost with connectivity, or we can integrate some onboard services or something, we can have some vendors or something, will that reduce the cost of subscribing a vehicle? How do you see this technology intervention helping making this subscription model more affordable?
Yeah, surely. I think there are two elements to it. The first one is once the economies of scale kick in for the subscription model. I think today we don't have too many cars, which it's not even 0.1% today. As the volumes will grow, at the end of it, it is how profitable the business model is going to be, or do you see profit in long run? So when you see profit in long run and the economies of scales, you are able to breach that. That's when the overhead costs which any organization has, that gets distributed over more number of cars. I think that's where people will start getting into it. And on the other side, as we make the system more automated, and how do we reduce the overhead cost is by automating everything, wherein it's like you're buying everything online. The number of people which are involved in the business are much lesser. So as the economies of scale improve and the cost of overhead goes down, and that can happen with the technology, I think that's when it will start kicking off. I think before COVID, it was moving on well, But after COVID, everybody wants to have, cars. People are buying more cars on their own rather than going for all these models. But I think things are coming back to normal. People have started moving towards shared mobility, and I think subscription will also move on. And I think the last piece is there aren't too many players in subscription today, and as the number of players will grow up, I think that will also push the subscription model even further.
Thank you. Amit, ji, just want to understand from you, when you budget your investment, earlier it was mostly the hardwares or the mechanical products that was the focus for investment in terms of capacity creation. Earlier, only the innovation or R&D was the part where, for all these mechatronics or electronics was a investment center. Now, how the things are changing when you look at investment in mechatronics or electronics product for your group and overall industry, if you could share?
Okay, at least I think when it comes down to us, we are predominantly an electrical electronic supplier. So for us, that investment is huge. But even if I were to divide it between software and say other embedded technologies, I think software takes over around 70% of what we invest in. But also there is no single supplier that actually delivers most of, say, even a single product into most OEMs. It's an ecosystem. There's multiple players that come together to deliver even a single product. There are software stack suppliers. There are people who do, say, HMI differently. There are people who do, a piece of software that, or, a networking like component that gets delivered. So it's actually an aggregation of multiple ecosystem players when it comes down to delivering a software. But in terms of investment, be it in terms of trying to work with external companies or doing it ourselves, I think software does take over most of what we invest in now.
Okay. Do you find any skill gap there or upskilling that needs to be done there? How easy it is to find, because your company has gone into electronics and mechatronics heavily. So what are the challenges that you are facing right now?
I think as far as software is concerned, we see that the dynamics of the business are obviously changing. There is there's a rapid shift towards as we spoke about centralization of of ECUs, more model-based architectures. We also see more importance of things like over-the-air updates, or be it cyber security and functional safety. So these are new competency areas that a few of them are in short supply, and yeah, we are trying to work towards trying to build up competency in these. And again, ecosystem players are very important in all these cases. So we do work with a lot of players in the in the industry to try and build up this competency.
Okay, thank you. Balbir ji, your segment is already a luxury segment where, spending power is not a concern. Going forward, what are the features in terms of connectivity that you see becoming popular in markets like India, and how Audi is trying to work on that?
So I think what is becoming popular is more telematics. So I think in the times to come, we will also see, let's say, insurance costs based on how the usage. So usage-based insurance. So these kind of topics will come through. Of course, it is, like I mentioned, the leasing model is slow at this point in time, or less. But I do see in the next couple of years, slowly it developing more. I think for us, let's say from the luxury point of view, the connectivity in the coming time will be between, let's say, more car-to-car basis. May or may not be in India so soon, but it may take some time. In information of traffic coming into the car, you're interacting beyond the car. Let's say the car becomes your extension. You're able to book a hotel. You're able to book a restaurant through your car. Your car is also like acting like a mobile phone for you. So these kind of features we do see in the coming years becoming more prominent in luxury space, where it becomes not just a moving from A to B, but it becomes more like a convenience for you, that you don't have to pick up your phone and you're able to solve some of your problems of life through just by making those announcements to the car, and the car takes care of those things.
Beautiful. That will certainly encourage more collaborations among the people working beyond mobility space. Mr. Brar, how do you see, will that reduce the cost of owning a vehicle, because these players who are going to provide onboard services like retailing, or you can say about a hotel, coffee house, or anything that you can order from your car, will there be some kind of collaboration in terms of trying that will help also reduce the ownership cost of the people going forward?
I think more than cost, it's more about convenience, I would say. So I don't really see the costs coming down, but the overall value for a customer will surely improve with this. And just to add to what Balbir said, vehicle
So
to
suppose there are 5, 10 retailers or e-tailers, okay? Why will you choose to put one specific app there? Will there be something there?
Yeah, so it finally depends on the long-term collaboration. I mean, you will see value from both the sides. You would like to go with a player who's adding value to you as well as your consumers. See, at the end of the day, consumer is going to decide if he wants to go with the e-tailer A or B. And usually, you tend to go with somebody who's giving you more variety, more choices. That's how the consumer make choices, and a manufacturer would like to go keeping in mind what consumer wants, right? And just to add to what Balbir mentioned, vehicle to home is going to be another one, right? You are able to interact with your device, with your home, with the external environment, what we say as infrastructure with the pedestrians. So I think all those things will come in, and I think this is going to be a huge convenience, not so much from the financial perspective, but from a convenience perspective, the customers would love it.
Thank you. Before I open the floor for question from the audience, I have one last question with electrification, and this question for all of you, all three of you. Uh, do you think the role of connectivity will increase, because you need charger, you need to locate a charger, you need to find the status of the charger, whether it is functioning or not? If a seamless connectivity is there, this can help very well to the customer's satisfaction also and customer engagement also. So how do you see this path, being created in India? I'll start with you, Balbir, then everybody can contribute.
From my perspective, I think it's not just about EVs, but in general, for every car, connectivity is very important. For EVs, it becomes even more, let's say, a must-to-have function, where a customer, if he's traveling from A to B, with all our experience so far, most of our customers are charging cars at home. But that's not the future. You need to have chargers, high-speed chargers especially. But the problem sometimes is that some chargers are not working. So this information for EVs is must to have. For the other cars, it can be there or cannot be there, but for EVs, it's a must to have. So yes, I would say what you mentioned is right. With EVs, it will become much more prominent.
Yeah, I think completely agree. I think EV will up it many notches in terms of connectivity. I think it's not just the the seamless connectivity and owner experiences when he gets into the car, but more from with respect to analytics of the vehicle itself, like battery and range anxiety are typical topics which can be improved drastically when you have connectivity. In the two-wheeler, three-wheeler space, for example, battery swapping is a classic case where we see that battery management system being integrated with, with actually a telematics can enable, tracking battery as an asset, and which we see going forward, that tracking battery as an asset, the leasing models, the financing model, immobilizing a battery if you've not paid up, your fee for your battery, or recycling of batteries at the end of their life. I mean, all this gets enabled when you try and track battery as an asset. And to make that possible, you need some form of connectivity inside the battery that can enable you to do that. So this is just one example, and there are several others where you could actually do dynamic, analytics of a battery. You could have a hot region in India where you could actually send a software code that could, make the range as well as battery perform very differently from other parts of the country. So you could do a lot more things when you're connected, and I think electrification just improves, because it's a slight unknown right now what's going to happen. I mean, there's only as much experience as we have with electric vehicles, right? So there'll be a lot of unknowns, and being connected just helps you take quick actions on many of them.
Let's look at to start with, let's look at some of the statistics around connectivity. So today, 40% of the cars in India are about 10 lakhs plus. And I assume, barring the lower end of the cars, I would assume 50% of these cars are connected, because when you go to mid to the top, these cars are connected. So about 20% of Indian cars are connected today. And some of the studies say that by 2025, 75% of these cars are going to be connected. Of course, as Balbir mentioned, the connectivity are of different levels. Maybe the hatches and sedans will start having the basic ones, and the SUVs and the MPVs may go to the next level of connectivity, and hence, but having said that, 75% of the cars are going to get connected. And EVs, I feel, more rather than individual customers, I feel fleet will have a far more usage of the features in terms of where the charger is, because for an individual buyer, you are charging your car maybe, and by that time, I assume the range would reach at least 350 to 400 for the mass market cars. But the fleet operators are the ones who need the access for the availability of the charger at different places, because they need to charge at least once or twice their cars so that it keeps running, or for outstation customers. So let's say I'm going from here to Chandigarh or Jaipur and I need to come back the same day. I need to charge my car. I think that's where it will be more required versus. So basically, the fleet operators would have more requirement, but yes, for individual buyers also, it is going to be quite important.
Balbir and Mr. Barar, both of you, I asked that question, how the retail scenario will change with intervention of technology, going beyond AR and VR. How do you see that future? Yes, start with you.
So we are already seeing at least the research part. Now 90% of the customer, the research happens even before he walks into the showroom. He has seen multiple videos, and videos is already one of the one of the tools through which customer makes a decision. The second one are the communities, the online communities. For every car you have a community. You just go inside that and you say that I'm planning to buy this and this car, and you will get 20 feedback on that. So it is already playing a very, very critical role. At the time of making a decision, so earlier consumer used to go to maybe 5 showrooms or 4 to 5 showrooms to make a decision. Today, consumer is going to maybe 1 or 2 just to validate that, okay, this is the car I'm buying. And maybe from a color perspective, he wants to make sure that, the color that he's buying, how does it really look in reality? And also to get a bit of a confidence on, the delivery timelines and, the accessories, etc. And that also is kind of reducing now, because when I talk about accessories and colors, the kind of images that you see online, it gives you a fairly good idea how your car is going to look with the accessories and with the color combination, etc. So yes, the dependence on the showroom is already reducing. Some of the manufacturers are already looking at smaller size of their showrooms and depending more on digital. So yes, but you can't completely do away with the brick and mortar, because customer still wants to go touch, feel. And I think it somewhere gives a trust to the consumer as well. Some of the players have tried, and don't want to name it, but I think that touch and feel is missing. So I think it will remain, but yes, the sizes will go down. Maybe the number of touch points will go down, but digital will definitely take over.
So for dealers, this has been probably one of the biggest, pain point in terms of investing in large Taj Mahals, as Mr. Malhotra and many of his friends call it, to the big dealers. That will happen. And according to the study that we did recently with among 200 dealership groups, not outlets, about 15% of their sales were digitally influenced last year. So this is the study that we did recently. And Balbir, your thoughts?
So we are in the retail industry, so we are into automotive retail. We follow what customer wants. So if in the future the demand is more digital and customers don't need this experience, we will have to follow. But in the luxury segment today, I can tell you that luxury car buying is a very emotional decision, and it's a family decision where customers still come to our showrooms. They do take test drives. Before they want to buy a car, they want to look at the interior, exterior, what features the cars have. So there is a lot of engagement, and you also have to believe that Indian customer is also very engaging in terms of negotiation. So this happens sometimes on the phone, but most of the times also in the showroom. But you're also right that, like you mentioned, Taj Mahal. So these are some things which are changing now. We are also looking at multiple possibilities. In couple of our showrooms, we integrated pre-owned cars business. So these are possibilities that we look at. Of course, like Barar was mentioning, cost of running the business have to be looked at, whether it is rental cost or any other cost. So this is making us change going forward. But at the same time, you have to also see, like you mentioned, digital experience is not just during buying. It's pre-purchase, during the purchase, and post-purchase. And now digitalization is playing role everywhere. And the quantum of time a customer spends before buying on digital is huge now. And by and large, again, like Bhar mentioned, customer is more or less decided which car before he comes to the showroom. So the decision happens a lot digitally today, but the experience cannot happen completely digital. So this is where the physical, so that's why we call phygital experience to the customers today. And I believe for the luxury space, at least, it will continue to be for the coming years before it completely becomes digital.
Hybrid and phygital is currently the mainstream. Yeah. Please make the mics available to all those people who are raising hand. We'll take 3-4 questions only because we have little time left.
Good afternoon, Nabeel. Good afternoon. I'm Udit Bagga from the Bagga Link Group. We are dealers for Maruti, Bajaj, Hyundai, Bharat Petroleum. So my question is to Mr. Barar. Like we were talking about connected cars. So I want to understand how with connected cars you have a lot of information about the consumer, their behaviors, their patterns, their driving modes, their destinations. So how are we using that as an AI for the consumer benefit? And after the customer has bought the car, what add-on are you giving them once you know about these behaviors, or we are just keeping that data to ourselves?
So I think Balbir mentioned that data. Whenever you are using anybody's data, you are supposed to take a consent from the customer. So first of all, consumer consent is very, very important in this, and we do get certain queries from the customers about about their cars. Right now, we are using based on when customer wants it. Right, we have not started using any proactively any of the data because the laws around this are still uncertain, unclear. So we are not getting into any kind of open kind of analytics which we can inform the consumers. Right now, it is more need-based. But yes, there's a clarity on law, legal clarity on that. We will see in future. And as I mentioned, you can do a lot of things like predictive maintenance, wherein you can inform the consumer if his brake pads are wearing away. You can inform him that this is the time to replace it. Based on his usage pattern, you can inform him why his mileage is low. And you can also tell him that why probably his engine is overheating because the engine oil levels are low. So there is a plethora of things that you can actually do once there is more clarity and you start using the consumer database.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Rishan. I'm from MapMy India. This is a question for the gentleman from Kia and from Audi. So there's a very interesting concept which is happening these days with the recent launch of the new OS by Apple and even Google, where they're slowly trying to get in through the car, through the infotainment, and now even the cluster. From an OEM perspective, I wanted to understand what is your school of thought there. So while we spoke about in this event that you want to build new connected use cases and create that seamless experience for the end customer, at the end of the day, are you willing to own that experience, or are you willing to explore the big tech companies coming into the car and giving that ecosystem experience in the car? Thank you.
I think it will be a coexistence. We are developing our own systems, which we want our customers to experience. But at the same time, if there are generic companies who, like you mentioned, Apple, if they're bringing a newer experience for the customers, we are also willing to look at those. So it's going to be an era of coexistence. So it cannot be this or that. It will be both.
Okay. Question from
Yeah.
Avik Chattopadhyay. You know, the more I am connected as an individual, the more digital footprints I leave. The more digital footprints I leave, the more you can monetize it, right? And the more money you make as an automaker, because you're not going to make any money from sales anymore, and your service intervals are anyway becoming once a year, and you don't make much money from there. So is this entire thing of connectivity a grand plan between the automaker and the software developers of gypping the customers and making money for yourselves in the long run? Because otherwise, just from the physical product, you don't end up making any money.
So I think convenience and on the way they will make money, but we'll like to hear from them.
So, very tough questions you're asking, I must tell you. But yes, there will be times when we will be monetizing this, but it will not just be we monetizing, but we are in an ecosystem where customers know everything. It's not that we can steal the money and run away. When we are connected through telematics, as I mentioned before, let's say tomorrow, if the customers drive their cars well, probably the cost of insurance will come down to half. This is one of the examples. Like yesterday, as Audi India will launch a program which is a customer loyalty program, it is also through a connected applications. So what we are doing is we know so many customers. We have, let's say, sold 80,000, 90,000 cars. We know the strength of ours. We know these customers. So we are able to negotiate with certain vendors to give more services at a reasonable cost. Let's say if a customer books through my application a hotel in Oberoi, he is able to get a better price. So it is not a one-way communication that we are getting all the data and we are using it, but it will be also a two-way communication where we will also be giving back to the society or to the customers. And another example to also the previous question, one of the gentlemen asked that we don't use individual data, we use collective data. But sometimes, let's say there was a car which was stolen, but it was a connected car, and a customer called us saying that, Mark, my car has got stolen. We needed a consent from the customer, and FIR was lodged, and we got a copy of the FIR, and we could actually trace that car in 4 hours. So it is not just that we will be monetizing it, I think it will be also giving back. So yes, going forward, as we become more and more electric, there will be pressure on the profitability of network as well as OEMs. So I think we'll have to see other things apart from just selling cars, what other services we can offer to our customers to make their life better and potentially also earn, but at the same time also give back.
Yeah, I think similar thoughts. So ultimately, it has to be a win-win for a consumer and automaker. If consumer is willing, and if consumer wants certain benefits and OEM wants to give it, and consumer gives you a right to use this data for some other benefits, I think it makes a win-win for automaker, for a consumer, and the third party which is willing to utilize that data for some benefits. So I think as things evolve, we'll get to know the future. But I think wherever there is a win-win, it surely is a success.
So this is Hariharan Raju from Ford Motor Company. So as we are all talking about telematics and connectivity and digital, so see, I have a phone, and as a customer, I have more access to give what I want to give to the applications or developers, right? But I see, as you said, customers are still owning the data of the vehicle. But I see it's more of automakers still not opening up their proprietary information. Most of the CAN signals are still proprietary. So do you think OEMs are still putting a lot more stress on the security aspect? I understand. But in the other side, which is not opening up the data, which again, not introducing new features into the market, which can be developed by the developers in the whole.
So I think Balbir partially answered that question earlier. You are using a collective data. You may not be using the individual data and breaching the privacy of a consumer. But when you are using collective data and you are finding insights that the braking in India versus any of the other countries, the braking is more, so your brake pads longevity has to be more, or something similar. I think those are the decisions which we are making through this combined data, but not getting into looking at individual data and sharing with others. So I think these are the aspects which we are looking at overall to improve the quality of our cars and also reducing the maintenance requirement for our consumers.
No, I think what he's also mentioning is, OEMs giving access to data to
Yeah.
individual developers. I think you can understand there are several security aspects when it comes to opening up CAN networks, especially of a car, right? I mean, it is how you get into the car. You could apply a brake when remotely when you have access to wrong information, let's say. So there are like different threat vectors that come into the vehicle when you open up such vectors. And I think OEMs try and keep that part of the vehicle and the safety aspect of that vehicle very secure. But what is happening going forward definitely is when you have more software defined applications, especially for say infotainment and likewise, there will be more and more opportunity for third-party developers to actually develop apps that could be installed onto your infotainment system that could give access to many features. Now, for that, obviously, things are changing, right? We spoke about Apple opening up, more interfaces in the car, actually giving access to, say, the instrument cluster. So you would see that through these applications and also other open source applications that we see many OEMs develop, that there will be an opportunity for third-party developers to actually develop some good UI interfaces as well as certain apps that give. So I think it's coming. It's a matter of time. It's already there in several parts of the world, and I think with more Google and Apple applications, you would also see that happen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, one last question, please.
Hello, I'm Kapil from Lubrizol. Mr. Dhillon mentioned a very interesting point about usage-based insurance. So do you foresee also usage-based maintenance practice?
Why not?
Thank you.
So that was a sweet, short answer. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Sorry, we'll not be able to take any more question because we are running out of time. We are already late. Sorry, you can connect with the speakers offline, off stage. Thank you so much, everyone, for being wonderful audience. Thank you so much, everyone, for such an insightful discussion. Thank you.